Might not be as exciting as the punching, but I'll do my best. All right. So you guys might be wondering why a Canadian is here at a free speech American Patriot rally, but I'm here to give you a warning. Because as a denizen of the cold northern wasteland that is Canada, nothing would please me more than to tell you guys that you will never meet the same fate that we did. That your history of protecting freedom and individualism will keep you safe. Unlike in Canada's system, where we have a full-on assault on Western values, where we have people being arrested for tweets, where we currently have motions being passed in our government making it outlawed to criticize Islam, and where people are being persecuted for comedy and fined tens of thousands of dollars by a social justice tribunal for the crimes of making offensive jokes. I would love to tell you that America won't end up like that, but that would be fake news. The notion that you are safe from having your freedoms and your culture stripped from you by left-wing malcontents, rather like the notion that you are safe from having your lives stripped from you by Syrian refugees, is fake news. Americans may feel placated by the idea of their Constitution keeping them safeguarded from the same malignant leftist force that have infested Canada. But the reality is that the global ambitions of the enemies of freedom have existed for half a century, and because this is the one country that has stood up to them more than anyone, they're going to come for you harder than ever. And make no mistake, the assault is working more than you realize. As a certain highly triggering problematic writer here from the Bay Area said, Cthulhu swims slowly, but he always swims leftward. Now, some people might look at the masked Antifa out here and think it's silly to put their ideology in the same boat as a reality-destroying elder god as Cthulhu, but these people are not the malignant Cthulhu cultists that I'm talking about. They can't even be said to be his cultists because they're simply the barnacle clinging to Cthulhu's side. Except barnacles aren't that noisy or ugly as Antifa. The real cultists that I'm talking about are the faceless bureaucrats, the ivory tower tenor intellectuals, the globalist neocons, the leftist mouthpieces, better known as the media, which might be here today. Thank you. And all the other neo-Marxists that have convinced people and the public that totalitarianism is dead. But it's simply gone by another name. It's simply gone by social justice, by feminism, by democratic socialism, or even compassionate conservatism. These are all cheap dollar store masks for totalitarianism, or some may even call it communism. Yes, contrary to what most of the nation believes now, communism is alive and well in America. With insidious incrementalism, it has spread through the very foundations of our society, and it is festering in our institutions. And it is transforming our world to their world slowly. And we haven't even noticed how much this nation has changed because we are looking from the inside out. And many of the patriots out here today may be well aware of this reality, but the mainstream media will probably paint me as a paranoid McCarthyite. And they'll paint you as Nazis and as bigots, and they'll downplay the militant, violent leftist force out here today, known as Antifa. And you know what? Politicians in the 70s used to predict that this is what our country would come to. They used to predict that this communist totalitarian influence would come in waves at some point. But what they probably did not foresee was that the totalitarians today would go from looking like Hugo Boss, magazine spreads from hell, to looking like deformed offspring of Hot Topic and Tumblr. But seriously, the more important question about our Antifa friends here is how we got to a point where these people can appear in public as radical supporters of an ideology, communism, that has ensured the deaths of over 100 million people. More deaths than any other political ideology in history. And yet, mainstream society today and the media will paint them as normal. They'll still deny the disgusting fact that communism is well and alive here today in America. It was not always like this. Back in the 1950s, conservatism and traditionalism dominated American and European ways of life. With the threat of communism visibly at the door, people were prepared, they were ready to fight it, and they were ready to stand up to it. So the communists were aware that people were ready for this threat, and they realized that they had to go through other ways to deceive the American populace and to take over the West. They called it the Long March Through the Institutions. Its goal was to infiltrate all sections of society, especially the education system, as many can probably see as the result of UC Berkeley over here. And in doing so, they would slowly shift the bounds of acceptable opinion until communist policies and ideas were portrayed as moderate and practical, with an end goal of complete subversion. In remarks to Congress in 1963, Representative Furlong from Florida laid out 45 goals of communists. And I'd like to just quote a couple here to make my point. Firstly, the communists instructed each other to infiltrate the press, get control of book review assignments, editorial writing, policy-making positions, and really, who among us who has read the Washington Post or the New York Times or BuzzFeed can deny that this was a massive success? Second, they told each other to gain control of key positions in radio, TV, motion pictures. Speaking of which, I think we've got some media over here. Maybe if there's CNN here or CBS, ABC, MSNBC. Whether those stations are here or not, I would just like to say on behalf of the communists, keep up the good work. Third, they decided to gain control of all the student newspapers. Well, joke's on them, because I'm sure any of you could get an op-ed criticizing social justice published in a student newspaper. Anyone? No? Bueller?
No.
Right. They got that too. Fourth, they said to continue discrediting American culture by degrading all forms of artistic expression. Today, it's considered art to carry around a mattress and accuse someone of rape. I'd say mission accomplished on that front. Now, fifth, they wanted to break down cultural standards of morality by promoting pornography and obscenity, or as Kim Kardashian calls it, her business model. Sixth, they aimed to discredit the family as an institution, encourage promiscuity, and easy divorce. I can't even crack a joke about that one because it is too depressing and too true. Seriously though, even the most establishment liberals in media will admit that they have succeeded in these tasks and they have infested these institutions. And even if you agree with some of the changes that have been wrought in American society since the early 60s, I think it is obvious that those changes were likely pushed by people who meant to do you more harm than good. And the fact that they have succeeded should scare the hell out of you. President Trump himself has repeatedly brushed up against the rule of subversives, as evidenced by the fact that the entire system is still stacked up against him. With the state populated by a mix of leftists, of globalists, of neocons of all forms, why wouldn't it be stacked against him? And while I would love to tell you that Trump can outfox the system by playing 9D underwater backgammon, the reality is that he's going to have a very, very, very tough time fighting it if he is able to at all. And I cannot... Oh, thank you. You can put that on. That's great.
That's better. Oh!
Adorable! And God save Canada. I cannot stress enough, winning these elections is necessary to defeat these people, but it is not all sufficient. With the institutions taken over, the left never has to win a single election ever again to get their agenda onto us. We won a very, very, very big important battle with Trump, but we have not won the war yet. But fear not, I come not to bury the West, but to praise it, however dark the world we live in. The fact is that we can and we will retake it from the weak, sniveling, petty tyrants who have convinced themselves that they are its rightful owners. And while the based stickmen among us might think this will take an SJW skull-cracking revolution, complete with free helicopter rides at its conclusion, I want to propose something simpler and smarter. I say we learn from our ideological opponents. Instead of resting on the laurels that we've now got one guy in office for 4 years, we need to realize that Trump is only our foot in the door. If we are to succeed at undoing the poisonous system the left has foisted on us, we must become like them, subversive, cunning, and coordinated like never before. If we want to move beyond rallies to lasting institutional change, we must ask ourselves, who is in charge of the police to keep us safe from these violent protesters? Who is in control of the media reporting on this? Who even signed off on the paperwork that allowed us to have this rally in the first place? Politicians come and go as administrations do, but civil servants, tenured professors, and workforce behind the scenes of our infiltrated government stay from administration to administration. And once we've identified where the real power is and the influence lies, we can dispatch freedom-fighting agents to worm their way in, play the rules as necessary, and then, once they have the power, reclaim control, reverse the decades of damage caused, and gradually roll back restrictive regulations and poisonous social norms. I applaud you all for being a part of the first chapter in retaking the West.
Bring your message back to the White House!
Thanks for coming up. And I am in no doubt that we have not seen our hardest days yet. And though the path ahead will be slow and arduous, we are well on our way to ensuring a future where ourselves and the future of the West and our children can speak freely, think freely, and live freely once again. Thank you for coming out, guys.
You want to stay strong and don't give in to them. They got to sucker punch people. This is America. We don't stand for that shit. Ow! Yes, Paul. Hey, brother. Thank you.
Everybody, can we get another round of applause for Lawrence Southern and Patriots for coming out, helping us with security, and helping Lawrence Southern get to our car safely.
Hey, all my Christian